more people become open, it actually makes it the industry more vibrant. Because then, people innovate, people do new things, and everything goes, when tide is high, everything goes up, right? But these are somehow sitting in their little shop and thinking, okay, I have 10,000 people, I have 20,000 people, I can do better. But they're competing with, a lot bigger forces out there. So I think for us, the whole issue is going to be, okay, even if, on the vendor side, people change, the issue is also on the operator side. I mean, I think what you presented and other people presented, a lot of this stuff is very complex. See, in the past, right, you were used to, as an operator, dealing with boxes that, okay, you bought a BTS, you bought an MSC, or you bought an E Node B, an S gateway, P gateway, and you're done, right? And now all those things are split apart into 15 layers, and, there's a name for every little layer you have, neutron, proton, extron, whatever, right? I mean, so you saw 15 acronyms. By the time somebody figures out, you already done PhD, right? So you say, and that's not easy. And and what we are seeing is that only the big companies, so AT&Ts can afford it, Verizon's can afford it, Jio can afford it, because you have internal teams who are knowledgeable. You have the engineers and all of the stuff. But this whole thing is really not designed for somebody to easily adopt. And until it comes to a point where people can just, adopt it the way they're used to adopting it, or the knowledge base either goes up or the requirement for the knowledge goes down, it will be very difficult for this whole ecosystem to really work. Again, so far things have been working. With the industry consensus comes more, when the people define 3GPP rules. But in reality, those are 95% done. The 5% is left to imagination, and there is really no interoperability among number of vendors. And there's a lot of issues regarding intellectual property as well. So I think the three areas where I believe there is a potential. So ONAP, I think you should also covered. There is a automation layer. So the whole idea is that, as the networks get bigger and bigger, and you have a lot more devices and a lot more people using it, the way, say, Google or Facebook or other, Amazon run their networks, they're actually running it with very few people. They run the whole data centers with a lot less people. Versus today, if you look at AT&T and other big companies, they have lots of people who still they need to manage the networks. So bringing the whole network cost down, running it in a more automatic way, detecting the problems fast enough, self-correcting the problems, healing the network itself. So there's a lot of things we can actually use from the open source and the ONAP project to make that work. Similarly, we are participating in the Extend project, and this is where I guess our previous speakers here, separating out the hardware and the software and making the interface, open. I mean, just imagine, yesterday Tariq was saying that he would like the actual E Node B to come down to $2,000 or $3,000. Every time I talk to him, it goes down by $1,000, right? So it started at 5,000, it became 4, now it's half every time, right? But just imagine, I was looking at these projectors, they're probably more than $2,000, right? I mean, and it's like that speaker, but just think of this way. I don't need a 3GPP spec to feed data into this projector. People know how the hell to connect their laptop to this projector, and it works. But today, to connect hardware which sits on your tower, you need a 3GPP spec to connect that thing to a computer which will be running the baseband, right? And you cannot make it open. You cannot dismantle the two. You can't buy it from two different vendors. And this is the biggest crooked scheme I've seen, right, in any industry. And this is a big industry, right? I mean, and it's like there used to be 7, 12, 15 players. Now there's 3, 4 players left, and somehow all the big operators can't dismantle them. You keep buying from the same people that's doing the same thing, right? And somehow waiting for a different result. So I think unless operators themselves change and figure out, how to open it, nobody can solve this problem for you, because, you don't encourage innovation unless you somehow dismantle it yourself. Why don't in your own, RFPs, you ask for that I'm not going to buy from somebody who doesn't have the damn interface open, right? But so even AT&Ts of the world can't get it done, right? So this is where I think if for operators to adopt the openness, you have to ask for openness. Because in the previous, I think that in the morning the discussions we had, that unless the government tenders have requirement for open source, it won't take the encouragement and initiative. And that's where I think some of these things will only be adopted if you ask for openness and you tell of different vendors you had that, okay, in the past I was doing things this way, but now I really want to be done in a different way. So I believe there are opportunities where you can actually, rather than, because I think, the services game is lost. Let's call it that way, because I don't think for service providers to innovate in the services space on how certain things get done from like the way Facebook does, or how do you build a social graph. You're not going to build a Facebook again. You're not going to do a WhatsApp again. You're not, so at the end of the day, that games is gone, right? And it's okay. Now your game is mainly, okay, you've got all these devices who have all these requirements. You have all these service providers who want flexibility. So they want low latency, high speed, low cost, better predictability, better quality of service. And you have only this much spectrum, only this much cost you can afford, and you cannot discriminate because you have net neutrality and all of that stuff. So that means how do you become intelligent enough and reduce your cost? And the other thing which I keep, when I go talk to operators, is that in the past, right, when it was 2G, 3G, you are buying networks for 10 years because things stood for 10 years. Now things were not changing fast enough, right? Now if you look at between, when was 4G built so Jio launched it last year here, right? And people started using it. In another couple of years, they'll be talking 5G. Similarly, so the pace at which things are moving are actually gone very fast, and you cannot hold on to the same old principles. So I think this is where, I believe that the whole concept of radio needs to change, and that's what I think Ash's company and our company is doing. The way the enterprises network are going to use the network, no matter what, you'll be forced to change, right? Because enterprises will want, Wi-Fi is obviously solving certain problems, but it doesn't give you QoS, doesn't give you predictability. And also, like in this building, you can actually have your own private LTE network, which is better QoS than Wi-Fi can offer. So these are the kind of things you can use open source to build it. And there's a lot of issues on, when the way that networks are structured today. You basically, all the traffic comes into the core. You have everything comes into the EPCs, which are far away. It has very high latency requirements. And so as the traffic grows, you may actually have very simple white boxes sitting on the edge where you can just do a local breakout. Similar to what cable companies do today, right? So there's not much. You need to start becoming like cable companies and start thinking that way, that I got a bunch of these devices who are going to attach to my network, demand all this. So obviously there are areas where open source can still be used and things can move fast, but the bigger areas, I think, unless you change, it'll be very difficult to adopt all this open stuff. Thank you.